Welcome again to my Tens and Tens of Friends. It's me, Teacher TJ. Today I will be reading a Reddit post. This one is in the social skills subreddit Window C, and it's titled, Most People Don't Have Friends Because They're Insufferable. That title right there just made me stop and say, now wait a minute now, because I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have friends. Can I have friends? Of course. Do I want friends? I don't. Everybody says I'm quite delightful. But what I know is a lot of times it's being friends with people. I'm such a great friend that if my energy isn't matched at my big age, I don't want to be a friend. So the reason I don't have friends per se is I was raised wrong. Yeah, I was raised wrong. And that's all right for me. And what do I mean by that? So I was raised as a people person for whatever reason. I don't know how, why, when, where, what happened. I'll unpack that later. But what I do know is I'm a Cancer, a June Cancer. I'm very loving. I'm very caring. I love sharing. I love buying gifts. I'm just a sweet girl. I'm just a lover girl. So, being that translate to men that I date as being a pygmy. And pygmisha doesn't stop just with the means. It actually translated over to the friends too. So I'm like type whatever my friends want, I'm going to try to accommodate however I can. If I don't feel like that's being reciprocated, I don't want to be a friend. Today, at this day and age, I don't want to be a friend. If I don't feel safe, like my secrets can be safe with you, or I don't feel like our relationship is growing or getting deeper, as far as connections and stuff, I don't want to be a friend. I'd rather just be alone. I'm a Cancer. I'm a homebody. I am alone. I'm a loner. My dad is a loner. My mom is a loner. So for me to be alone, they nada. One thing about me is I don't like being phony. I cannot, for the life of me, if it's on my mind, it's coming off. I have to say it. And that's not never in a mean way, but in a real way. So I found it really hard to find out that people would say things, but not to me. And I'm not hard on taking any type of criticism. So if you're talking about me to each other, but not to me, it's never brought to me, you're not my friend. Because if I have something to say about you, I should be able to say it to you. Because if I'm going to say it about you, it's more so of an improvement to you. Can't do it. To just have people that you cannot have real conversations with, we might as well be Facebook friends. I'm okay by myself, trust me. I do know I talk too much. I talk a lot. And at this age, I'm learning to listen more. If I offend someone and hurt their feelings, I feel like if you're a friend to someone, you should be able to say that. Like, did you hurt my feelings when you said? But with having a group of girls, it's like there has to be somebody, I guess, in charge of the girls. And because you know the group of girls, it just seemed like a bunch of me, so I just and I've been fine ever since. I work with kids, I work with preschoolers, and a lot of times the kids they want to play with a friend. And sometimes the person that they want to play with don't want to play with them. So this is a battle that I have dealt with consistently, especially with certain kids. Go where you're appreciated. Go where they want you in the group. And for me, if I feel like you don't want me around you, I'm not gonna force myself. That's how girls get hurt. Real shit happen when you force yourself into a place that you're not supposed to be. So working with kids, I try to teach them, don't go and play with them when they're telling you that you can't join them. Okay, they says you can't join them. As a teacher, I can make them let you play with them, but no, because as soon as I turn my back, they're gonna do something mean to you because they don't want you there. So no, you don't go and play with someone that does not want you to play with them. So I teach that a lot with my kids at school, and I'm my own best friend, and I love my kids, and that's all I need. I go where I want to go. I do what I want to do, and I don't need nobody to do it with me, and that's that on it. But or you can take it for what it's worth and treat them accordingly. Now let's get into this post. So I do work at a cafe often, and I've recently started not listening to music or anything while doing work because of this. I've been able to overhear a lot of people's conversations, friends, dates, coworkers, etc. And I've realized so many people freaking suck. And that's when everything clicked. Barring being totally isolated for most of the day, a lot of people have trouble getting people to hang out with them because they are so insufferable. I don't think I got a problem with getting nobody to hang out with me. I am a time. They don't listen, they don't ask genuine questions, they don't follow up, and they don't remember small details. They belittle people. They talk so much about themselves. They don't show genuine happiness for the other person. They're buzzkills. They're insecure. They're competitive. They don't talk about anything truly substantial, etc. Unless my cafe happens to be the meeting grounds for the worst people, I have to assume this is a general thing. This isn't really advice, but just an observation. It also explains how everybody can be lonely, but nobody makes friends. You people need therapy badly because it totally makes sense why people don't want to keep in contact. That was weird because you said they at your coffee shop, but you saying they don't want to keep contact. But yeah. First underscore pair underscore 8083 says, I've always been shocked by how so many people that seem snobby and obnoxious have friends, let alone partners. Sorrow dash division says, literally, or the bullies from school that literally made half of the school's life's hell and they're suddenly married with a house and 2 kids, shaking my head. I think certain people's personality can get them what they want. They can attract people to them and they can get married, they can get friends, they can get popularity and all of that. But really, it ain't hard to have kids though. Or it ain't hard to get married or have kids. These act like they don't want to be married, but they really want to be married. But first underscore pair underscore 8083 replies, I'm 27 and still single with a few close friends. Late diagnosed neurodivergent. A neurodivergent is people whose brains function, learn, and process information differently than what is considered typical. It is a non medical umbrella term for the human brain, including autism, ADHD, and dyslexia, emphasizing that these differences are natural variations rather than deficits or illnesses. Wow, that's a lot. Shit, I bet she's neurodivergent. An earlier diagnosis would have made high school and especially college much easier socially. I'm still a bit baffled that a mean girl from my high school is getting married in 3 weeks, despite not being warm, welcoming, or even conventionally attractive. I guess there's a lid for every pot. Anybody can get married. It's not hard to get married. Sorrow Dash Division says the woman who used to bully and humiliate half of the girls in class when we were in primary school is now engaged to a professional basketball player from the best team in our city. Life. I wonder if he'll ever know what he used to do, though. Wendell C., which is a OP, says, also, if it makes you feel better, dating an athlete is not that big of a flex. They tend to be absent and quite promiscuous and also a bit vain. She might have access to a lot of money now, but whether or not the relationship is of much quality is another story. And then Sorrow Dash Division replies and says, it's just frustrating to see that bullies almost never meet the consequences of their actions. How do you know that? You don't know what that person really sitting around by themselves thinking. You could fake the funk with the world, but you can't fake the funk with yourself. Reading My Shampoo replies and says her consequences could end up being in a loveless marriage. That's true. First underscore pair underscore 8083 says, I'm just trying to focus on myself. I don't wish her ill will, but we were never friends, so whatever happens in her life is none of my business and vice versa. It still hurts since all I want is companionship. Get out there. Normal dash wish dash 4984 says, at my kids' high school, bullies aren't held accountable. Students without strong caregivers are often bulldozed over without an admin batting an eye. Langley Links says they're probably both bullies and like that about each other. Okay. Windows C says, if it makes you feel better, maybe she's grown. If that doesn't work, also remember that mean and miserable people find other mean and miserable people and get married all the time. Nothing to envy. Face Hepburn says people usually marry people with similar values, so don't be baffled. She's probably marrying someone similar to her, or she could have changed for the better since high school. And then maybe fiction says most people find isolation intolerable. That's true. I know how to be by myself. I love being by myself. People vary in how much alone time they enjoy, but everyone has some degree of needs for belonging, connection, and communication. Solitary confinement and isolation is considered an especially cruel punishment, even for prisoners. So, yeah, most people lower their standards before accepting total solitude, but others raise their standards as they feel more and more burned and less trusting, and the results tends to be painful isolation. So, in general, it's probably for the best that most people find other people who are similarly unhappy to get their basic social needs met together. Ed19627 says, I must be effing lost or something. I only find the bad kind of people. I am not looking for friends. I have zero friends. You man, that friend is just so underrated, overrated. Gravitas and Urbane says, but doesn't that contradict what the original post is trying to say? Terrible people seem to have no problems making friends. So just being nice isn't the key. Self Improvement Act or account or ACCT says, I feel you in some ways as I have observations of people a lot. That being said, some people don't really give a or overanalyze interactions the way others do. It works for them, even if it's hard to comprehend. Necro Candid says, something I've learned is that therapy is a default recommendation for a reason. My self reflection ended up traveling all the way down to my insecurities despite terrible trauma, and I've been able to resolve that and even quit my medication and turned out to be a cloud in my judgment. All on my own. Not going to recommend it. It's irresponsible, but I take the notes and I learned. Now, I'm probably quitting nicotine and weed. My brain is genuinely telling me I'm getting nothing from it anymore. But I can do that, but just doing something any always dreamt about is hard to even attempt for most people. And it puts you in a unique position because there's no change in anything. You're not going to go on a walk coming across dozens of insightful people daily. So there's three routes I see people take. They become hateful because it's hard for them to accept their own shortcomings like me before. They isolate for peace of mind and hope to cross paths with like-minded people. That's probably me right there. Or they use their skills to choose to help nudge people in a better direction or to use people for themselves. She didn't say that, but I will. Plenty of people out there give us but hide themselves out of fear. So it's neither them nor others similar are reaching out and are too busy thinking about it. They're just going to get mistaken for being the same as everyone else. It's easier to assume that everyone just plain sucks. The OP says that's the thing. I'm not sure it even works for them. Listen to them long enough, and they'll talk crap about those same people and whine when things don't follow what they want. They have a fundamental lack of respect for themselves and other people, so dig deep enough and it'll come out. Dawn Steam says, I had a college friend who complained that she was outcasted in high school and struggled making friends. As I got closer to her, I realized how mean she was. We were in a school club, and one time she yelled out to another friend, OMG, you're an A cup. That's so funny in front of a bunch of guys. She would talk about our mutual friends, about how she secretly hated all of them. I didn't join in her gossip and just listen. Disclaimer, I love gossiping, but I never do this to my friends. She would even make condescending comments to me. I was an introvert plus a homebody, but I still had a good handful of friends and didn't go out as much as her. She forced me to join a different club because she thought I wasn't socializing enough. It felt condescending, to be honest, because I have never felt lonely or isolated, right? It's not like I was a hermit. Eventually, she made enemies with all our college friends, so she decided to join a frat to make new friends. You mean a soror? And she ended up losing a lot of friends there too. Jessica Chicken 12 says, LMAO, did we meet the same person? They literally bounce from group to group and are so mean and rude. XX underscore dress underscore math underscore XX says, that's a good point about this being in a cafe. Now that I think of it, I feel like that is not a particularly conducive environment for deep conversations or discussions. True. I would much prefer having one in the park or somewhere less noisy and with less people around. That's true. And then the last post that I would read is Scott says, aren't you observing the people speaking who do have friends actually hanging out already though? That's true. OP says, yeah. But I think the point of I have no friends, I have trouble making friends isn't exclusively not being able to hang out with people. I think a big part is how consistent people are around you and whether they want to maintain the friendship. The relationship. Plenty of people, some I knew personally, can snag people in for a hangout or date, but have a ton of trouble getting follow ups. I'm sure it's not all on them, but I definitely see how that's a trend that could happen. And that was all I have for now. The fact of the matter is, find friends who, as Angela Yee says, go where you are appreciated, not tolerated. Bye, Tia. Don't know what I'll do without you from the beginning to the end. You always be here by my side. And I'll call you my best friend through the good times and the bad ones, whether I lose or if I win. So that you are my best friend. I'm eating some food. Hopefully, I ain't in my teeth. Everybody listening to this YouTube, look to your left and look to your right. And those who ain't nobody sitting on either side of you probably. But no, it's just like that. No, you look how they tell you, look to the side and look to this side, and then the person that's sitting there probably not gonna be there. Somebody ain't gonna make it through with you. It's true. And I have really learned to stop trying to force a relationship that is not supposed to be. Some people for seasons, some people for reasons, some people for a lesson, some people for a blessing, whatever. If they're supposed to be there with you, it won't be confusing because there was a lot of confusion in that. It will be a natural friendship. It won't be insufferable.